In March 2013, medical teams were called to respond to an emergency at an imposing mansion in Ascot, Berkshire, one of the most exclusive areas in England. But they arrived too late. The man was already dead. The cause of death? Hanging. The man found dead here wasn't just anybody. It was Boris Berezovsky, the most powerful businessman in Russia in the 90s, and the person who helped Vladimir Putin rise to power. Officially, his death was recorded as undetermined causes. But everyone knew the truth. Berezovsky had made the most fatal mistake a Russian businessman could make. He challenged Putin, and one of his closest men, Roman Abramovich, watched everything from the sidelines. But Roman never imagined that years later he himself would become the target of the man he helped create, and that the only person in the world capable of ordering his poisoning would be exactly the one he treated like a father. Roman Abramovich was born in October 1966 in the Soviet Union. His life began in a tragic way. When he was just 1 year old, his mother, Irina, died from a blood infection. 2 years later, at the age of 3, he lost his father, Aaron, who was crushed by a crane at work. Orphaned before the age of 4, Roman went to live with relatives in the icy north of Russia. That difficult childhood forged a rare personality, that of a natural survivor. Someone who learned early on that, to succeed in life, rules had to be broken. At 16, Roman dropped out of school and started selling used tires. During his mandatory military service, he discovered his true calling. He sold stolen gasoline to other army units. In the Soviet Union, where private businesses were forbidden, Roman didn't care about what was allowed by law or not. When the Soviet government started allowing some private businesses, Roman took the chance. His first official business was a company that made plastic toys, including rubber ducks. It might seem like little, but in the Soviet Union, where rubber ducks were considered a luxury, this business made a lot of money. But Roman soon realized that he wouldn't spend his life selling toys. In 1992, at the age of 25, he pulled off a move that would change everything. Roman used fake documents to steal an entire train loaded with 55 cars of fuel. He personally stopped the train and ordered the driver to change its destination. The value of the theft was enormous, almost 4 million rubles. And of course, as expected, he was arrested for that. But here is the most important detail. The case was closed after the company was mysteriously compensated. And with that, Roman learned a crucial lesson. In the new Russia, problems with the law could be solved if you had enough money. And now, I need to tell you something. That little scam was just the beginning. The real turning point in Roman's life would happen through a man, Boris Berezovsky, the most powerful businessman in Russia in the 90s. Just so you have an idea, he had direct influence over President Boris Yeltsin. When Roman met him around 1995, his life changed completely. Through Berezovsky, Roman reached what they called the adults' table. The place where billionaires were made and government companies were sold to friends of those in power. In this new position of advantage, he created a business that changed everything. A scheme called loans for shares. Here's how it works. The Russian government was out of money and needed urgent loans. In exchange, it offered shares of the country's best companies as collateral. But, of course, the auctions were rigged, set up so that the government could never pay them back. That way, the businessmen kept the companies for a ridiculously low price. Berezovsky and Roman used this scheme to steal the oil giant Sibneft. The move was both brilliant and dirty at the same time. a government minister ordered that $137 million of public money be transferred to a specific bank, which immediately loaned that money to Roman. They were using public money to steal public companies. At the fake auction, Roman and Berezovsky paid only $100 million each for Sibneft. But the company was worth at least $2.7 billion at the time. In 2000, Sibneft was already making $3 billion a year. But don't think Roman got away unscathed. This historic theft had serious consequences, and soon, someone would try to bring justice. The purchase of Sibneft was surrounded by mysteries, especially suspicious deaths. Ivan Litskovich, the director of a refinery who refused to support the deal, was found dead, drowned in the river 2 days before the company was created. The case was never solved. When Russia's chief prosecutor opened an investigation into the theft of Sibneft, the response was brutal. Someone leaked an intimate video of the prosecutor to the press. He was immediately fired and the investigation simply vanished. Roman and Berezovsky had just proven that they were above the law. And that was just the beginning. With the oil company under control, Roman moved on to another, even more dangerous sector, aluminum. And look, what I'm about to tell you now makes the oil thefts look like child's play. The aluminum wars in Russia were a period of total violence. Roman summed up that time well. Every 3 days, someone was murdered. That's because the fight for control of the aluminum factories involved contract killings, blackmail, and open warfare between rival groups. About 100 executives, businessmen, and journalists were killed in this war. The violence was real and targeted. Anyone who got in the way of business became a target. But Roman had a different strategy. Instead of killing his rivals, he saw an opportunity. How about bringing all the companies together and ending the war? And with that, he bought a large factory that was in crisis and used it as the basis for his brilliant move. Here's where a crucial detail comes in. Roman used the political influence of someone very powerful to convince his biggest rival to make a peace deal. And do you want to know whose influence that was? From a man who was becoming the most powerful person in Russia, Vladimir Putin. When Vladimir Putin came to power in 1999, everything changed in Russia. For Roman, it was the beginning of a relationship that would be described as that of a father and son. Roman not only survived the change of government, he helped create that change. He was one of the first people to recommend Putin to President Yeltsin as a successor. Roman also helped set up Putin's first government. In 2000, Roman and his rival Deripaska made a historic agreement. They merged their companies to create Rusal, the third largest aluminum company in the world. With that, they put an end to the bloody aluminum wars. Roman was only 33 years old and already controlled oil and aluminum empires. But the greatest proof of his special position came in 2005. Roman sold his share of Sibneft back to the government. The price? $13 billion. Compare that with what happened to other wealthy businessmen. Mikhail Khodorkovsky, who at the time was the richest man in Russia, lost everything and was imprisoned for 10 years because he challenged Putin politically. Roman, who was always loyal, was rewarded. He turned a $100 million investment into a $13 billion payout, approved by the government itself. But Putin had other plans for his adopted son. In 2000, Roman became the governor of Chukotka, one of the poorest regions in Russia, in the far north of the country. For many, it seemed strange. Why would a billionaire move to such a distant and poor place? The answer to that question reveals something remarkable. How does the relationship between Putin and his loyal businessmen work? The position was an assignment given by Putin himself. a way for Roman to prove his loyalty by using his own fortune to solve a government problem. Roman invested more than $2.5 billion out of his own pocket, built schools, hospitals, renovated the capital, and tripled local salaries. When he left office in 2008, he was elected to the regional parliament with 97% of the votes. But Roman's most famous project to become known worldwide was the purchase of Chelsea Football Club in 2003. He invested hundreds of millions of pounds, turning the team into one of the best in the world. Roman also became famous for his luxurious lifestyle. Mansions in London, gigantic yachts equipped with military defense systems, and an art collection that was worth almost $1 billion. Moving to London was part of a strategy to protect his money, gain respect in the West, and build political connections outside of Russia. Roman created a double identity with this: Putin's trusted man in Moscow and a respected businessman in London. For 20 years, this strategy worked perfectly, but in 2022, an event showed that it's impossible to belong to two different worlds at the same time. February 2022. The invasion of Ukraine by Russia destroyed the world, carefully built by Roman. For almost a month, he watched other Russian businessmen lose yachts and mansions. Week after week, he waited for his name to appear on the sanctions list, but it just didn't happen. Roman soon chooses his side. Ukrainian authorities even approached him to act as a peace negotiator. The Ukrainian President Zelensky even personally asked the American President Biden not to impose sanctions on Roman, believing that he could help with the negotiations. But in Putin's eyes, this mediation was seen as betrayal. Roman was acting independently, perhaps to protect his money abroad. Roman's situation became quite dangerous on the night of March 3, 2022. After a negotiation meeting in Kyiv, Roman and at least 2 Ukrainian negotiators became seriously ill. The symptoms were frightening: red eyes, peeling skin on the face and hands, and temporary loss of vision. Roman was blind for several hours. He was taken to Turkey for treatment and recovered. Chemical weapons experts said the symptoms were similar to poisoning by chemical agents used by the Russian government. The low dose suggested it was a warning, not an attempt to kill. The message was clear: stop acting on your own. Less than a week after the poisoning, the British government imposed heavy sanctions on Roman. All his assets were frozen. He was banned from traveling, and no one could do business with him. The impact was immediate. Chelsea was paralyzed. They couldn't sell tickets, merchandise, or sign players. Roman was forced to sell the club he had owned for 19 years. The sale was made for £2.5 billion. But here is the most frustrating detail. That money is still frozen in the United Kingdom to this day. The British government wants the money to be used only to help Ukraine. Roman wants it to help all victims of the war, including Russians. In the days before the invasion, Roman quickly transferred $4 billion to his 7 children, trying to protect part of his fortune. The sanctions proved that all the prestige he bought in the West was fragile. The moment international politics changed, everything disappeared. Today, Roman Abramovich lives between Istanbul and Tel Aviv, cities that have become refugees for Russian businessmen. His fortune was greatly reduced, and most of it is frozen. He is fighting in court to recover his assets. The poisoning in Kiev, well, it was a brutal reminder that his former closeness to power would no longer protect him. And now, Roman finds himself in a golden prison. His story exposes a sad reality in Putin's Russia. Wealth is not an acquired right. It is a privilege that can be taken away at any moment. So, what do you think? Does Roman Abramovich still have any chance of recovering his empire and returning to Putin's good graces? Or do you believe that this separation between father and son is final? Leave your opinion here in the comments. If you enjoyed this insane story of power, betrayal, and billions of dollars, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. See you in the next video.